Welcome to Tech I Spy, where we cut through the noise and break down the businesses shaping the future. Whether it's emerging technology, disruptive industries, or investment deep dives, we go beyond the headlines to bring you the insights that matter. If that's your kind of thing, make sure to subscribe and check out even more content over on Rumble and Dailymotion. Links below. Now, today's focus: BFLY Network, a company with a bold ambition to take ultrasound technology, once locked away in hospitals and specialist clinics, and put it in your pocket. Portable, AI-powered, connected. A device that could redefine accessibility in medicine, from emergency rooms to remote villages, from home care to the battlefield. But for all its promise, the road ahead is not without challenges. Competition is fierce, adoption is slow, and the fight for market dominance in medical technology is never a gentle one. So, is BFLY Network the next great breakthrough in healthcare, or just another overhyped startup struggling to survive? To find out, we'll break it down with a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A full examination of where the company stands, where it's headed, and whether it's worth your attention. Let's get into it. BFLY Network. Now, there's a name with a certain elegance. But beneath the branding lies a company aiming to fundamentally change how ultrasound technology is used. The premise is simple enough. Take a medical device that's long been bulky, expensive, and limited to hospitals, and shrink it down to a handheld tool, affordable, connected, intelligent. A scalpel to the bloated machinery of traditional medical imaging. And the technology, well, it's remarkable. Instead of relying on piezoelectric crystals, the old standard in ultrasound, BFLY has gone fully digital, replacing them with a semiconductor-based ultrasound-on-a-chip system. It means no moving parts. It means precision, repeatability, something that can be mass-produced at a fraction of the cost. And that's the thing, isn't it? Cost. A hospital-grade ultrasound machine could set you back $50,000, maybe even $100,000. BFLY's device, the IQ3, sits somewhere just above $2,000 plus a subscription. A price that moves the barrier to entry from institutional budget to single practitioner expense. Now, let's talk about that subscription model. You see, this company isn't just selling a piece of hardware. It's embedding itself into workflows, into medical networks. The device connects to the cloud, lets users store and analyze scans, integrates artificial intelligence to assist in diagnostics. You don't just buy the scanner, you buy access to continuous improvement, to new features, better imaging algorithms. Recurring revenue, that's the golden phrase for investors. A model that turns a one-time sale into a long-term relationship. And accessibility. That's the real revolution here. Not just the cost, but who can use it. Ultrasound has long been the domain of trained sonographers, specialists with years of experience. BFLY is shifting that dynamic. Its AI-powered guidance helps doctors, paramedics, even nurses perform scans with far less training. Rural clinics, field hospitals, ambulances. Suddenly, real-time imaging isn't confined to hospitals. It's out in the world where it's needed most. It helps, of course, if it's a product that looks good, feels good to use. The sleekness of a modern tech device rather than the cold, industrial design of traditional medical tools. Plug it into a smartphone, a tablet, and you're scanning in seconds. No bulky cart, no complicated setup, no need for a dedicated room. It's a piece of 21st century medicine, at last catching up to the rest of technology. Momentum is another thing. Hospitals and healthcare providers are notoriously slow to adopt new technologies, but the tide is shifting. Partnerships with major institutions, growing recognition of its utility in emergency care, expanding into veterinary medicine even. There's motion. Real motion behind this. The kind that takes a company from promising to established. And yet, for all these strengths, all this promise, there are shadows at the edge. But that's for another chapter. Let's pause here before we descend into the challenges, the weaknesses. Now, let's step away from the glow of promise and into the dimmer corners. Weaknesses. Every company has them. Butterfly Network, for all its innovation, is no exception. First, and perhaps most glaring, is the simple fact that medicine is slow to change. Not because doctors don't like new toys, not because hospitals lack curiosity, but because healthcare is bound by risk, by regulation, by tradition. Ultrasound has been done a certain way for decades, and entrenched players, GE, Philips, Siemens, aren't just going to step aside and let some newcomer waltz in with a semiconductor chip and a dream. Hospitals already have established contracts, long-standing relationships with these giants, bulk pricing deals, service agreements. That kind of institutional inertia is a heavy thing to push against. Then there's the adoption problem. Yes, the IQ3 is cheaper, more portable, and powered by artificial intelligence. But that doesn't mean doctors will use it correctly or trust it. Ultrasound is an art as much as it is a science. A trained sonographer doesn't just wave a probe and see a perfect image. Positioning, angling, understanding the grain of the tissue, these things take practice. AI can guide, but it can't yet replace expertise. There's a risk then that a doctor with little ultrasound experience might misinterpret a scan, miss a diagnosis, rely too much on automation. In a field where misdiagnosis costs lives, that's not something taken lightly. And speaking of automation, AI is a selling point, but it's also a weak point. AI-assisted diagnostics are under scrutiny. Regulatory bodies like the FDA don't just approve things because they sound good on paper. They want data, they want trials, they want long-term studies proving that these tools work as intended. Butterfly isn't just selling hardware, it's selling hardware. It's selling trust in an algorithm. And trust is slow to build, easy to break. Financially, well, there's a problem there too. This is not a profitable company. Revenue is growing, sure, but losses are still heavy. Selling a device at a lower cost is great for the end user, but not always great for the bottom line. The subscription model helps, but it's not enough yet. Cost-cutting has been happening, operating expenses have been reined in. But even a leaner operation doesn't erase the simple fact that Butterfly is burning cash. Investors like growth, but they also like sustainability. And if the company can't prove that it can stand on its own without constant fundraising, confidence can slip. Competition is another thing. Butterfly is not alone in this space. Other companies, seeing the shift in medical imaging, are developing their own handheld ultrasound devices. GE has one. Philips has one. Even smaller startups are entering the fray, and the more players in the market, the harder it is to maintain a pricing advantage. The risk, a race to the bottom, where margins get squeezed and differentiation gets harder. And finally, the software model. It's a strength, but it's also a vulnerability. A product tied to cloud services, to AI updates, to AI updates. To an ever-growing digital infrastructure is also a product tied to potential cybersecurity risks, downtime, subscription fatigue. Hospitals don't like to be locked into things that might stop working if the company behind them stumbles. So yes, Butterfly is changing the landscape. It's sleek, it's ambitious, it's disruptive. But it's fighting a battle on multiple fronts: adoption, trust, profitability, competition. Strengths don't exist without weaknesses, and for every advantage it has, there's a challenge waiting just behind it. But weaknesses are just part of the story. The real question is whether those weaknesses open doors to opportunity. And that's where we go next. Because this company, for all its struggles, sits at the convergence of multiple revolutions: artificial intelligence, telemedicine, portable diagnostics, and, most importantly, a fundamental shift in how healthcare is delivered. Let's start with the big one: access. The traditional ultrasound setup is a fortress locked behind cost, training, and institutional barriers. But medicine is changing, whether the establishment likes it or not. Developing countries, rural clinics, small practices, places that can't afford a $100,000 ultrasound machine, let alone the specialized staff to run it, are desperate for an alternative. Butterfly's device is small, affordable, and portable enough to be brought directly to the patient, rather than requiring the patient to travel to it. And in parts of the world where imaging is rare, this isn't just convenient, it's life-saving. Then there's emergency medicine. Hospitals are overstretched, waiting times ballooning. If a doctor in an ambulance can scan a patient in the field, identify internal bleeding, a collapsed lung, a cardiac issue, before they even reach the ER, the difference in outcomes could be staggering. Paramedics don't have hours. Sometimes they don't have minutes. A handheld, AI-assisted ultrasound in their pocket. That's not just an improvement. It's a revolution in trauma care.
And speaking of revolutions, there's telemedicine. The pandemic didn't just introduce remote care, it cemented it. More people are now seeing doctors through screens than ever before. But here's the catch. Remote medicine is limited by what a doctor can't see, can't touch, can't test. If Butterfly can push its device into home diagnostics, into personal health monitoring, it could expand the entire frontier of telehealth. Imagine, a patient with chronic heart failure scans themselves at home. The AI flags fluid buildup, sends an alert to their doctor. Intervention happens before they deteriorate, before they need an ICU bed, before costs skyrocket. That's where this is going. Another opening: partnerships with major healthcare systems. Yes, it's hard to break into hospitals, but once you do, you don't just sell a device. You embed yourself into the infrastructure. Cloud-based imaging, AI-powered diagnostics. A platform that, once adopted, stays adopted. And Butterfly has been making inroads here, aligning with medical schools, training the next generation of doctors on their system from day one. If they succeed, future physicians won't even think of ultrasound as a bulky machine on wheels. They'll think of it as something you pull from your pocket. And what about military applications? Battlefield medicine is brutal, unpredictable. Soldiers are often treated hours away from a proper hospital. An easy-to-use, ruggedized ultrasound device deployable in the field could make all the difference. Internal bleeding, fractures, lung injuries, all diagnosable on the spot. The military, the disaster response teams, the remote expeditions, all need tools like this. And here's a quiet but powerful opportunity: veterinary medicine. Because guess what? Pet owners spend billions on healthcare for their animals, and traditional veterinary imaging is just as clunky and expensive as human medicine. Butterfly has already moved into this space, but if it doubles down, if it makes scanning your dog, your horse, your farm animals as easy as checking your phone, that's an entire industry, largely untapped. Then, of course, there's AI itself. The more Butterfly refines its machine learning algorithms, the more it moves from being a tool to an advisor, from hardware to intelligence. If the AI becomes advanced enough to pre-diagnose, to guide non-experts, to make ultrasounds as intuitive as taking a photo, then it reshapes the entire industry. And in that future, it won't be about whether hospitals adopt it. It'll be about whether they can afford not to. So, the road ahead, it's wide open. Butterfly Network doesn't just sit in a market. It sits in multiple markets at once, all of them growing, all of them hungry for innovation. Medicine is shifting, becoming faster, smaller, more accessible. And this company, if it plays its cards right, could be sitting at the very heart of that transformation. But, and there is always a but, because where there is opportunity, there is also risk. And that is where we turn next. Threats. the shadows that loom over even the most promising ventures. For all of BFLY Network's innovation, its foothold in the industry is still shallow, its position fragile. Medicine, after all, is a battlefield, not just of science, but of economics, regulation, of trust. And in a fight like this, even a revolutionary technology can be swallowed whole. The first and most immediate threat, the giants. BFLY isn't alone in this space. The moment it proved that handheld ultrasound was viable, the established players GE, Philips, Siemens, Mindray noticed. And they are not the kind of companies to stand idly by while a newcomer carves into their market. They have the money, the resources, the customer relationships. If they decide to compete, to aggressively price their own handheld devices, to bundle them into hospital contracts for free, what happens to BFLY's edge? The truth is, GE already has its own handheld ultrasound. So does Philips. And while BFLY's technology is strong, these companies have decades of trust, global distribution networks, service contracts hospitals don't want to break. The race isn't just about innovation. It's about survival in an industry that resists newcomers. Then there's the adoption gap. BFLY is selling a new way of doing things, but medicine is slow to change. Doctors are trained on old systems, accustomed to old workflows. Even if BFLY's technology is better, it still requires a shift in behavior, in trust, in training. And that's not something that happens overnight. Hospitals are risk-averse. They don't like to bet their workflows on a company that isn't yet profitable, that might not exist in 10 years. And if the software subscription model starts to feel too expensive, if hospitals start questioning whether they really need cloud-based ultrasound, the very thing that gives BFLY its competitive edge could become a barrier to growth. And speaking of risk, profitability, or rather the lack of it. BFLY is still burning cash, still in the phase where revenue is growing, but so are expenses. Investors are patient until they aren't. If the company can't prove it can sustain itself without raising more money, confidence evaporates. And in a rising interest rate environment, where venture capital is less forgiving, a company that needs constant funding starts to look like a liability. The subscription model helps, but it's not yet covering the cost of scaling up, of staying ahead in the AI race, of competing with medical behemoths. Then there's regulation. AI in medicine is still a legal minefield. The FDA, the EU regulators, health authorities across the world, they're all watching, all cautious. Every new AI feature needs approval, validation, rigorous testing. And if regulators start clamping down on AI-assisted diagnostics, if new rules demand more oversight, more human verification, it could cripple the very advantage BFLY is relying on. Worse, a single lawsuit, one misdiagnosed patient, one AI-driven error, could do serious damage to the company's reputation. And let's not ignore the hardware vulnerability. Yes, the ultrasound-on-a-chip model is innovative, but it also means BFLY is reliant on supply chains that aren't fully in its control. A shortage of semiconductor components, a manufacturing delay, an issue with production scaling. It all disrupts revenue, erodes investor trust, slows momentum. And then there's the final threat, the one that no company wants to face. Irrelevance. What if AI progresses faster than expected and ultrasound itself becomes obsolete? What if larger companies integrate automated diagnostics directly into MRI, Connecticut scans, other imaging technologies that reduce the need for ultrasound in the first place? What if hospitals decide AI is too risky and regulations favor human-led diagnostics instead? BFLY Network has big ambitions, but ambition alone doesn't win battles. It needs scale, profitability, regulatory favor, adoption at a mass level. Without those, it risks becoming another medtech cautionary tale, a company with brilliant ideas that just couldn't break through the walls of the industry it sought to disrupt. And that is where the real fight lies. And so, after dissecting the strengths, the weaknesses, the boundless opportunities, and the very real threats, we come to the inevitable question. The one investors, analysts, and armchair speculators alike will ask: is Butterfly Network worth investing in? Well, that depends on what kind of investor you are. If you believe in disruptive technology, in the power of semiconductors to replace the old, in AI not just as a tool but as a fundamental shift in medical practice, then Butterfly Network is compelling. A company that isn't just selling a product, but a vision, a future where imaging is mobile, universal, instant. A future where an ultrasound scan is as simple as pulling out a phone, where AI narrows the gap between expertise and accessibility, where hospitals, emergency responders, telemedicine platforms can't afford not to integrate this technology into their workflows. But, and it is a significant but, if you are looking for stability, security, guaranteed returns, this is not that kind of stock. Butterfly is not profitable. It is burning cash, competing against giants who are fully capable of crushing it with scale alone. Adoption is not guaranteed, regulation is not predictable, and medicine is not a market that moves quickly. It is entirely possible that Butterfly is simply too early, that the industry is not yet ready to embrace what it offers, that entrenched players will squeeze it out before it ever reaches its full potential. So what then? It is a speculative bet, one that could yield tremendous gains if Butterfly finds its foothold, locks in its market position, and proves that its AI-driven imaging is indispensable, but also one that could collapse under its own weight if hospitals don't buy in, if competitors undercut its pricing, if its own financial runway isn't long enough to get it to sustainability. An investment in Butterfly Network is not a certainty, but a wager on the future of medicine itself. On a world where doctors, paramedics, home users, perhaps even AI itself, carry an entire ultrasound machine in their pockets. It is an investment not just in a company, but in the inevitability of change. And that is the risk. But it is also the opportunity. And that, dear viewers, brings us to the end of our deep dive into Butterfly Network. A company with promise, with peril, with a future that could go brilliantly right or catastrophically wrong, but a future worth watching, nonetheless. If you enjoyed this breakdown, if you want more of these deep analytical dives into the companies shaping tomorrow, then you know what to do. Subscribe. Hit that button, tap the bell, stay ahead of the curve. And if YouTube isn't your only haunt, you can find even more content over on Rumble and Dailymotion, where we're building a space for deeper, uncensored discussions. Links below. Go check them out. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep seeing through the noise.